Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you apply to a particular school being highlighted in a given episode, you should listen to all of them, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Don't forget to visit our website, www.collegeadmissionstalk.com, or the show notes of each episode to access the alphabetical list of all the colleges available with the related audio link to the right of each school. The alphabetical list provides you with on-demand access to all of the episodes so that you may listen whenever you wish. And if you want to receive links to episodes before they are released on the podcast, along with other related resources, please fill out the email opt-in form also available on our website and in the show notes of each episode. Lastly, please email me with any questions or comments at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Lara Guerrero Schmitt, who's the Assistant Director of Admissions for Access and Outreach at Bucknell University. Lara, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, John. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. And I got to start by saying that episode 8, which was released back on March 2nd of 2022, was the last time I did an interview with Bucknell University. So since then, have there been any new academic programs or initiatives that prospective students should know about?
Sure, John. Well, that was quite a bit ago, two years now. Our academic philosophy at Bucknell University is that we need to support our students as they express their intellectual curiosity. So, in order to do this, obviously, we have to grow as well. So that we can help them grow. So, with this in mind, we've not only added new majors and minors to our course offerings, like our business analytics major and real estate and human resources management minors, but we've also created new centers, like the Dominguez Center for Data Science, where we foster ethical, data driven decision making. We have the Pericelli Gegnes Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which helps students to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. And we actually have the new Center for Access and Success. And this provides a support system for students that have enrolled in our 5 pathway scholarship programs. And those scholarship programs are Bauer Scholars, Bucknell Community College Scholars, Gateway Scholars, Langone and Langone Walling Scholars, and those in our Posse program. And while it's not new, we do currently have Journey to Bucknell, which we're working on revamping. So this program brings qualifying rising high school seniors and one parent or guardian to spend a few days with us on campus, and their flight, train, or bus tickets and hotel room are covered 100% by Bucknell.
Hmm.
So in the past, we've offered this program on a somewhat limited basis, but we're actually expanding to 2 weekends this fall and to 2 weekends in the spring for admitted students. So that's something that we're really proud of and working really hard to get up and running.
Oh, that's terrific. And I want to repeat what you said, that you want to support your students as they express their intellectual curiosity. And in doing so, there's a lot of growth. It's only been 2 years, but within 2 years, there's been so many initiatives and changes. So we really appreciate that overview. I also want to mention, by the way, that I read that your retention rate is an astonishing 91%. That represents
Yes.
the percentage of first year students who actually return. So,
Mhm.
what are some unique aspects of student life at Bucknell that really keep them happy on campus and wanting to return? And what are some of your more popular opportunities available to your students?
Sure, sure. Well, actually, it's funny. I like to say location, location, location. Um, and I think that's one of those unique aspects of student life at Bucknell. So we are really conveniently located in north central Pennsylvania. We're just 3 hours from some of the East Coast most popular cities. So it's perfect for a day trip for students on the weekend to go to New York City or to Washington, D.C., Baltimore, or Philadelphia. Our campus itself is within walking distance of downtown Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, which is, I have to tell you, it is the quintessential picturesque college town, like what you'd imagine to be the perfect college town, right? It's got cool cafes and coffee shops. There's great restaurants. There's art galleries. There's a really quaint local museum and these quirky shops where you can get clothes or jewelry or even, stuff for your dorm room or for your house, for your home. And there's even an old school theater where you can see everything from first run movies to art films. And all of this is located right on the west branch of the Susquehanna River. So, in addition to having the options of city life on a weekend or small town life on a weekend, students have access to a lot of outdoor activities. So, our students love to do things like kayaking down the Susquehanna River, paddle boarding. They can go skiing in the wintertime at a nearby resort because we're really close to the Poconos. Um, they can cycle on our rail trail, go horseback riding, play our 18-hole golf course that we have here on campus, or they can go hiking through one of our many nearby state parks. So, really, in addition to just, the general offerings of the schools, like the clubs and activities that they could do on campus, they have all these other options to them also because of our great location.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you talked about location, 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 which you're in North Central PA with access to New York City, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, just to name a few. Walking distance, of course, to your downtown area and the Susquehanna River, which is right there, that offers so many outdoor activities, as you mentioned. So, in terms of location, visiting campus is so important to help determine for a student whether or not they feel that Bucknell or any college or university is indeed the right fit for them.
Yes.
So, if a student is fortunate enough to visit Bucknell, what are some of the must see areas on campus?
Our general tour route takes visitors through what you'd consider our must see areas, like our student union building and cafeteria, several of our academic buildings, our library, and a residence hall to see a typical dorm room. But while not generally open to visitors, there
Mhm.
are some other interesting areas on campus. So, for instance, if a student is interested in our animal behavior program, they might want to walk down to our primate house. And on a nice warm day, they might see our baboons, macaques, capuchin, or squirrel monkeys in the outdoor enclosure. So it's really cool. It's something that we offer that I don't think many other schools in the region offer. Or they might want to explore past our South Campus apartments and check out the Bucknell Farm. So, if a student's interested in sustainable organic food production, food insecurity issues, pollinator habitats, or the process of composting, that's definitely something that they would probably want to check out. And lastly, I would definitely encourage visitors to check out downtown Lewisburg. I know I mentioned before that it is like this picturesque college town, but really, if they're not, you know, interested in going to the shops or the restaurants, just walking or driving around to appreciate the architecture of the buildings and homes is definitely a must see.
Well, it definitely sounds like there's something for everyone, not only on your campus in terms of your academic offerings, but also off campus. There really seems to be so much for students and their families who come up and visit, certainly to do. So, can you walk us through the holistic review process at Bucknell University? And what specific factors and attributes do admissions officers prioritize when evaluating applications?
Sure, John. Well, first of all, we do start out by recalculating the GPAs we receive, since grading scales are often different from one high school to the next. Some are on a 4.0 scale and some are not. Some are weighted and some are not. So that is the first thing that we do. So we are test optional. So we only take into consideration SAT and ACT scores if we receive them. Therefore, choosing to not submit SAT or ACT scores does not affect the applicant negatively at all. That's a question we get a lot when families hear that we're test optional. So I always like to tell students, though, to ask their high school counselor for advice on whether or not their standardized test scores will add or detract from their application. Next, I'd say that while grades are important, they really aren't the be all and end all for us because really anyone can have great grades, right? If they're taking the easiest classes that their high school offers. What we want to see are students that are challenging themselves. So if a student's school offers AP and IB classes, I really encourage them to consider taking those classes, especially if they're specifically classes that are relevant to their college major. We also look at students' extracurricular activities, of course. We want to see if a student is well rounded. I want to know, do they play basketball and sing in the school choir? Are they a mathlete and play an instrument in the school orchestra? Outside of school, do they volunteer, have a part time job, or maybe help with an elderly relative? Do they read music or write comics? Do they play football or play the piano? These are really important things for us to know to get to know the student better. And almost more importantly, how much time do they devote to these things? Do we see a sustained commitment or are they constantly starting and stopping different activities? Maybe they're very curious in that way and that's why they want to try new things. Do we see leadership, in these areas? Or are they more of a reliable worker bee, type of student? So these are the sorts of things that really help us to figure out who they are as an individual.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that comprehensive answer. I just want to review a few things for people that are
Sure.
interested in applying to Bucknell. You do, in fact, recalculate the GPA. As we know, you receive applications from so many different high schools from throughout the country and beyond. Some have a 4 point scale, some do not. Some might weight their courses, some might not. You also mentioned the fact that you are test optional, which we appreciate. More and more
Hmm.
schools have done that, obviously, since the pandemic. And you're very interested in knowing what the students did outside of the classroom, outside of
Yes.
school, even if it's a job, taking care of a relative, whatever it is. And you talked about quality over quantity, really, is what you were talking about. You
Hmm.
want to make sure that the students actually have, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the president of the club, but that you actually did something for a few years as opposed to just jumping around, doing something for a few weeks and then doing something else and not
Right.
having anything sustainable throughout your high school years. So you want to see how much time they devoted to whatever the activity is. I was also curious, what is the institutional goal in terms of how many freshmen you want to admit, and how many overall applications do you actually receive to consider for that freshman class?
Oh, sure, sure. Our goal for the past few years has been a little over 1,000 students in each incoming class. In the past few years, we've received probably around about 11,250 applications each year, and almost 1,000 of those applications come in during our early decision one or early decision two rounds. And we accept a good percentage of our incoming class from these applicants. That means that by the time regular decision applications roll in, we actually already have a good portion of our incoming class filled. So by the time regular decision applications come in, you're talking about over 10,000 applications that we have yet to review. So you can see there from those numbers that it's pretty competitive when you apply regular decision.
Well, thank you so much for those numbers. And I asked that question because you're basically looking to fill a class just over 1,000 students for your freshman class, yet you receive over 11,000 applications. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that you talked about perhaps there's a little bit of an advantage if, in fact, Bucknell is your number one school and you go ED1 or ED2. It seems like
Yes.
there's a little bit more percentage wise that's accepted in the ED rounds, whether it's one or two, than in your regular decision, which becomes even more competitive. So let's dig a little deeper in the overall application. The personal essay is an opportunity for you as an admissions person to get to know a student better without meeting them in person. Can you share an example of an essay that really stuck with you? And what advice would you give students in terms of what to avoid when working on those college essays?
Yes, there's definitely one essay that comes to mind in particular. It was written by a student who worked at their family restaurant ever since they were in elementary school.
Hmm,
So I remember him writing about how this experience taught him responsibility, but it actually also made him very resentful.
hmm,
The fact that he was Asian in a predominantly non Asian neighborhood was already isolating for him. But then having to go straight home after school to help out his family made things even worse. He really didn't make any friends when he was in elementary school. He really suffered in the social aspect of school because of that. It wasn't until he was in junior high school when an uncle joined them at the restaurant and told him about the struggles he went through just to get to America that this
Hmm.
student learned to really appreciate his family and his heritage. So the essay, it was personal and it was thoughtful. So it really made an impression, which is good. But more than that, it was also very well written and technically sound. John, I feel like students often think that a deep and soul bearing essay
Hmm.
will carry them through, this part of their application, but they often fail to remember that the point of writing the essay is to, well, write an essay, right? So, meaning it shouldn't be stream of consciousness writing. It should have a good thesis statement or question. It should address that statement or question. It should flow well from one point to the next, from one paragraph to the next. And it should connect the students' ideas and thoughts and be presented clearly to us, and really it should have a good solid conclusion and closing. So if a student remembers, to make their essay thoughtful, to make it personal so that we get to know them better and get to know who they are as a person, but also remember that it's an essay. So we're also looking at it for their technical knowledge and their writing skill. Well, then it would get a gold star from me.
Terrific. And what about, is there anything that you could add in terms of things to avoid, things that students do that I would say are a mistake in those essays?
Sure, sure. Like I mentioned, that stream of consciousness writing. Some of them think, okay, well, I'm just going to write what I'm feeling, and
Hmm.
they'll get to know me because I'm talking about this really deep event that might have happened that really got me to learn so much more about myself as a person. Again, that's very important because we do want to get to know them, but we are still looking at how are they writing the essay because it is still a technical piece, and that is something that we consider when we're reading this piece.
Well, we appreciate that. And of course, the teacher's letter of recommendation, those are also an important part of the overall application review, as it gives you an opportunity to hear someone else's voice about the student.
Mhm.
So, can you share examples of teacher letters of recommendation that didn't add to the overall application? And what advice would you give to students in terms of who to ask to write this letter for them?
Great question. Well, let me start by answering actually the second half of your question first. So, we only require two recommendation letters, one from the high school counselor and one from a teacher. So, as far as which teacher to ask for a recommendation letter, ideally, it would be one who teaches a subject related to their intended college major, for example, their physics teacher if they want to be an engineering major. And hopefully, this is also a teacher that knows them very well inside the classroom, possibly even outside of the classroom. As far as a recommendation letter, which doesn't add to the student's overall application, that would be one with a long list of adjectives describing the student. I can't tell you how often I'll get a recommendation letter that just says, "Oh, the student's hardworking, they're intelligent, they're responsible, a team player, and outgoing. I highly recommend them. Thank you."
Right.
But really it makes us wonder, well, you're not giving us any supporting examples. Really, we want to know, why do you consider them to be responsible? How are they a team player? What makes you say that they're hardworking? These are the sorts of statements that can really only come from a counselor or teacher who knows a student well. So students should definitely take this into consideration when they decide which teacher to get a recommendation letter from.
Sure. And I would imagine that, for example, from a teacher, hearing a letter where the teacher says, anytime he or she speaks, everyone listens because they're so mindful, they're so thoughtful in terms of what
Yes.
they have to say.
Mhm.
So, for example, if it is a student that happens to, have everyone's attention when they are saying something in class, sharing that in a teacher letter of recommendation, I would imagine would help
Yes.
add to the overall application because you're not just, as you put it, using adjectives, but you're giving specific examples. In that case, it's a classroom example. Am I right?
Yes, yes, correct. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I, mention that because the lesson for students is that when you're asking a teacher to write you a letter of recommendation, maybe it's a club advisor. If there's
Mhm.
something specific that you want them to focus on, maybe there is a story, maybe there was an initiative that you took that really, helped whatever club you're a part of. Don't be
Right.
bashful to ask the teacher if they could write about that specific thing, right? Whatever it is, whatever's going to add
Right.
to your overall application, as opposed to just writing adjectives or frankly repeating what's on the transcript or what's on the activity sheet, which you also receive as part of your overall application. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. So, I also get lots of emails from parents about different support services that schools offer. So, can you elaborate on the support services available at Bucknell University, such as academic advising, mental health resources, career counseling, and anything else that you want to share?
Yes. So, like many schools, Bucknell definitely offers all of those to our students. But our academic advising starts as soon as a student enrolls. So, before they even get to campus, they are assigned a temporary academic advisor who will help them select classes for the first semester. Once a student declares a major, they're assigned their permanent academic advisor who will be their go-to resource for academic advice during the rest of their time at Bucknell. So we also have the Office of Accessibility Resources, which provides access and reasonable accommodations to all students who need them. We have the Teaching and Learning Center, which offers tutoring services and organizes study groups for our students. We have the Writing Center, which also offers assistance with any writing tasks our students may need at every stage of their writing process. And as I mentioned earlier on, we have the Center for Access and Success for the students in our 5 Pathway Scholarship programs. As far as our mental health resources, we have the Counseling and Student Development Center, which offers students access to solution focused and urgent care services. So that means they can schedule an in person individual appointment, they can sign up for group counseling, they can do video, chat, and messaging counseling. We have same day phone appointments for them, and our emergency services are available 24/7. And as far as career counseling goes, the Center for Career Advancement doesn't just help our students with finding jobs after graduation, they also help them to line up jobs even before they graduate. They also assist with finding internships and even applying to graduate school. And they offer services like resume writing, interview prep, and they even conduct mock interviews with students. And really, with an active network of over 55,000 alums worldwide,
Hmm.
the Center for Career Advancement is really a great resource for Bucknellians, regardless of if they're current students, recent graduates, or even if they've graduated years ago. So someone who's, a Bucknell alum, even from 1990, can come back to our Center for Career Advancement and say, "Hey, I need some help because I want to make a career change."
Well, that's so good to know. And you probably know I put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. Lara, if there are any links that you want me to add, you covered a lot of different things. I'm happy to put them in the show notes for the students and parents. So, is there a question I didn't ask or any other information you would like to share with us now regarding Bucknell?
The only thing I can think of, which I haven't mentioned, are actually our prerequisites for high school students.
Hmm.
So we require 2 years of a foreign language, of the same language, during a student's high school years. For example, taking French in 8th and 10th grade doesn't count.
Mm.
Taking Spanish in 10th grade and German in 11th grade doesn't count. But taking French in 10th and 12th grade does count. Also, American Sign Language does count towards this requirement. So it's not just a foreign language. We have a physics and or chemistry requirement during the high school years for engineering majors. So anyone who's interested in engineering, they should make sure that they take physics and or chemistry during their high school years. And lastly, our STEM, accounting, and business analytics majors had to have taken at least pre-calc during their high school years. So those are some things that students really should consider, especially as early on as they can in their high school career, so that they can make sure that they get those classes in.
Well, we appreciate you sharing those prerequisites. So, students, if you're applying to any of those programs, play this portion of the podcast episode back, or, of course, check the Bucknell University website for the latest information. Again, Lara, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is what are the top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
Oh, well, first, since we only have the information in a student's application to go by to get to know them,
Mm,
students need to be thorough in their applications. Please, please. So, there are areas in both the Common App application and Coalition application. These are the two online applications we accept, where they can go into detail on who they are as a student and as an individual. They should share with us not just their academics, but also their interests outside of school. We want to learn as much about them as we can and about anything which they feel gives them a unique perspective in life. Second, I would say that if they get a chance to visit our campus, they should make use of their time with our student ambassadors. They shouldn't be afraid to ask them questions during their tour or if they're waiting in the lobby. Our student ambassadors, they're the ones who really can tell them all about our classes and working one on one with their professors. They can tell them about internships and what doing research at Bucknell is like. They can tell them what it's like to study abroad, tell them about our school spirit and about all the clubs and
mm.
activities that we offer. They can ask them anything because really they're the ones who can truly say what it's like to be a Bucknell student since they're living the experience every day. And finally, ah, um, I guess I have 3 kids, John. So one is a recent college grad, one's a rising college senior right here at Bucknell,
Great.
and the last one just finished her first year of college.
Hmm.
So the third thing I'd say is the same thing I told my own kids when they were each going through the college admissions process. There are many great schools out there, and Bucknell is definitely one of them. But in the end, they have to choose a school where they can see themselves taking the classes and doing the hands on work in their areas of interest. The school where they see themselves engaging intellectually with their professors, right? Because that's where they're there. They're there to learn and to learn from their professors. But also, they're there to enjoy their college years. So the school where they can see themselves hanging out on the quad, or grabbing a cup of coffee downtown with friends in a cool cafe.
Hmm.
But most importantly, they should choose a school where they feel they'll be best set up to achieve and be successful in their future goals.
Well, we appreciate those pieces of advice. Number one, you talked about the importance of being thorough in your application. Students,
Yes.
you're not sitting in front of the college admissions representatives, right? They're not there asking you a
Mhm.
million questions. So that application must be thorough. If there's something that you leave out about yourself, now you're leaving it up to the college admissions representative to speculate as to why. The student ambassadors are amazing. I've been on many college campus tours and they absolutely are awesome. So definitely ask any and all questions. And of course, you talked about finding the right fit, right? It's not about, where your friends are applying or necessarily, what's the top 10 schools on the latest rankings. It's really finding fit for you. We talk about it all the time. Do you want to be close to home, far from home, rural area, urban area?
Mhm.
The beauty is that there's over 4,000 colleges and universities in the country.
Yes.
There's definitely more than one school for every student, but not every school is for you. So take your
Right.
time, enjoy it, and hopefully you find that right fit. Lara, you are awesome. This was such a thorough conversation. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP.